Hey guys, on the bench today we have the Technics SL-QL1 direct drive linear tracking turntable that was introduced in 1984. This particular unit is my own personal one that I purchased brand new back in somewhere around 1986. That means the components that are inside this unit are pushing 40 years old at this point, and those old electrolytic capacitors most certainly need replacement by now. So that's what we're going to do today. Biggest challenge is really just getting the turntable apart and the board released, but it's not too difficult. So let's get to it. So the first thing we want to do is take the turntable portion off of the table. Otherwise, when we flip it upside down, this would crash right into the lid, the stylus, and everything else and make a huge mess. So the easiest way I found to do this is to line the table up with these little slots. Put your thumb in the holes and just push with your fingers while pulling a little bit with your thumb, and that thing will pop right off. Here's the kind of interesting part. This the motor drive there for the direct drive assembly, and it's pretty neat. Just a big magnet and some stators there on the bottom. What you don't want to do is put any kind of tool or anything up against this bearing, because if you do that, you could wreck it pretty easily. But there we go. We got it off. We're ready to flip her over. So now we're upside down. Let's go ahead and start taking it apart. The feet just unscrew. There's 4 feet, and they all have springs in them. And one thing to watch for is the color. You see how this one's gold? The feet are different front to rear on this unit. The rear feet are going to have the gold color spring, where the front are going to have a silver colored spring. So when you do your reassembly in a little bit, just pay attention to that. You don't want to flip these around. I don't think they would fit quite right anyway. You'd probably notice they're different depths, but nonetheless, could cause a problem down the road. You can see that the one spring here is still silver. Of course, I didn't take it off the bottom yet. It's going to fall off on me. Here we go. But then the bottom just lifts right off. Pretty easy. And there we go. We're right at the main board, and this is really all there is to this turntable. There are some connectors right here that we need to pull out. So let's get these off. Being pretty gentle here. I don't want to break anything. They're not. There's no resistance at all. They're not locked in place. They're not epoxied or anything like that. They just came right out. So there are some other wires there that are certainly not connectorized. They are just soldered directly to the board. We'll have to deal with those. Probably finagle a little bit to get to the part side of the board, but yeah, it's just a few Phillips head screws here. As we get these pulled out, this will at least free up the board. This is not coming out of here. That little, it looks like an RF shield, I believe. It's right where the power cable comes in, and it's just a foiled backed cardboard. We'll get that out here in a minute, I think, after we raise it. I don't want to rip it, so I'm not going to force it. Anyway, let's just get this last screw here, and then I think we'll be in good shape. Do bear in mind, I've never taken one of these apart, so you're watching it as it's done for the first time. This I did want to show you a little bit. This is the little switch module for the lid. For the cover. So this just tells the turntable whether or not you have the cover closed before, if you hit the start button. But it's got this little metal winder around there, I'll call it. It's probably not the best term, but that holds the cables in place. You got to undo the cables and then just take this screw out. And this is one of a few that we've got to take out like this, because these are not connectorized. These are soldered directly, and I don't want to desolder all of this. It looks like a connector on there, but it isn't. And yeah, it's just a switch. Pretty straightforward. There's another one over here. It's a little transistor package on a heat sink that I'm pretty sure is the motor drive. We'll just unscrew this. All of these are just held on with one screw. At least the ones I've found so far here, all one screw. Just take this off. We've got, there's some heat sink compound. Watch your fingers. Don't want to get that all over the board. That'd be fun to clean off. So there we go. We're pretty free. We've got, we can see all the capacitors now. We can see all the components. We've got a couple of connectors here at the rear of the unit. It's upside down at this point, so the rear is at the top of the screen. But yeah, I don't see anything else here that's connectorized. These are all soldered on. So yeah, let's not really. I don't want to desolder all this. This is going to be a complete mess if I got to do that. I got enough to do with the transistor or the capacitors in there. Get that little transistor pack out of the way too. And then the other little module here down at the down at the the front of the turntable. This is the strobe, the little LED that strobes on the side of the turntable itself to show the speed lock and the speed sync. So just a couple screws here, and this guy is just gonna lift right out of there. There we go. Yeah, easy peasy. So not too bad. Let's get these other connectors off of the top, which is technically the bottom. Sorry about it being upside down, everybody. So we're just going to pull these off. They're no different than all the others. It just this one feeds the top cover. Looks like just the stylus control and whatnot for the tracking. And this one here, I'm not entirely sure where it goes, but we're gonna probably just looks like maybe the audio connection for the stylus, the input of the magnetic stylus. So there we go. We got it flipped over, and it wasn't too bad at all. We can see all the components. Got quite a few capacitors here. I got a kit for this off of from an eBay seller, actually. And these are Japanese caps, just like the ones that are on the board from Technics. Different brand, but still a very good quality package, and much easier than trying to get all these individually and get them all yourself. So it was just convenient. I'll leave a link in the description to that. It's not in paid or anything or endorsed. It's just it's what I bought. This capacitor is bad. I mean, we got to this just in time, folks. This you can see how bad that one is. It's all, I mean, they are all kind of bad. That one's bloated. It's really green. Yeah, anyway, the new capacitor, though, is a radial, oddly enough. But if you look at the board, you can see the Technics actually provided for a radial capacitor to be installed in this location. So I don't know if they just used both types back and forth, maybe depending on availability when they manufactured these. But you can see if we look at the pads here on the back, they are absolutely just connected together, and there are factory pre-drilled spots where you can install a radial capacitor. So this is going to be fairly straightforward. They got a little jumper here that just connects the pads, and really not much more that you need to do. There's not going to be any bodge wires or anything. So really, really impressed with that setup. Technics did design some really good stuff back in the day. So let's start getting this first cap off of here. And I'm of course not going to bore you with the entire cap replacement, but this one being kind of the main, biggest cap on the board, first one in the circuit as well. I want to kind of get to this one. I believe this one's C3. So I'm going to put some fresh solder on there and a little bit of flux, actually, and put a lot of flux. That's okay. More is better, right? So, flux smoke in your face. Who doesn't enjoy that in the morning? So let's go ahead. I'm just going to use some solder wick on this. There's all kinds of ways you can do solder removal. Everybody has their own preferred method. You can use a solder sucker or whatever. Some people have those fancy, desoldering tools. I've never owned one of those. Never really felt that I needed to spend the money on those because I've had pretty good luck just using the plain old solder wick, and it's always worked for me. And I've been soldering now for several decades at this point, and it just works, and it's really inexpensive. So if you feel like you need to go buy a bunch of tools to do a job like this, you absolutely don't. The place to put your money is in your soldering iron, because that is going to be the most important tool with any soldering job. As it would stand. So looks like we've got this loose, but this capacitor still has not fallen off the board. And then as it turns out, well, it's glued. There's some epoxy in there. Don't know why they epoxied that cap down. So I'm just going to very gently pry this with my screwdriver, very, very ever so gently. That epoxy on there is so dried up now. You could also just use a razor knife and trim the plastic band off of the capacitor and kind of leave it behind and peel it off that way. But yeah, that stuff's just crumbly, and it came right off. There was no resistance at all, so no risk of damaging the board. I don't know if I would do that if the epoxy was still in good shape. I'd probably cut the cap off the board and then deal with it later. So anyway, looks like we got it. It's still got a little bit of solder here. We're just gonna a quick heat, and this thing should just fall right off, and then we can get a good look at it. It's clearly in terrible condition. Oh yeah, this thing's a mess. It's bloated, it's green, corroded. Yeah, so we're just going to clean up these solder pads here so that we can make room for that radial cap, because remember we're going to be doing a different form factor capacitor, at this location. The other locations, at least from what I can see in the kit, they're just standard. They're not radial. This is the only radial cap that came in the kit, and I assume it's just because that is the available replacement today, or whatever. Anyway, it's fine. It's going to fit in there good. We can see how we got to line it up here and get our legs in. Freed up the holes. And this should be pretty quick and easy. So let's just go ahead and get it installed here. Yeah, that's one hole. I think it looks like I've got to maybe open up this other pad. There are two. There's two holes there, and they're one's further apart and one's closer. And I think, yeah, I'm gonna have to open up the other one. So, this capacitor is a little bit big for the holes that I opened up. So I'm gonna go all the way to this end one here. You can see it's really designed for multiple components. It's kind of a strange layout. So let's get this one opened up, because this is going to be the one that we need. It's just a little bit further. In fact, yeah, I think this is the one. Might be is it the one in front of it? Let me get some solder on here. Let's see. See where we end up here in a second. So yeah, I should probably just open up all of these to get this has turned into a little bit more of a chore than I had thought, because I thought I had the right pad, but the hole, but clearly not so. This capacitor is just pretty long, and I'm just going to open up both of these, because I think I might end up using that from your perspective here, that far left hole right there. I think that's going to be the one we need, because it's pretty long, but it's still going to fit just fine in that space. Still got that epoxy on there to deal with. It's not really coming off either. Let me see if this is going to fit now. I think. Make sure we got the polarity right. Always watch the polarity, guys. That is the biggest thing with a cap replacement. If you get one backwards, let me get rid of this glue here. I'm just going to trim it off with my end cutters. I think that's probably sufficient. I don't need to take all of this. I'm going to get as much as I can. Okay, yeah, I'm good. That's plenty. So let's go ahead and put this on, making sure, of course, that the negative is on the negative side, and that would be the silver side of the capacitor. The black end, oddly enough, is the positive side. I don't know why they designed them that way, but that's the way it is. So we're just going to make sure, put it in the same orientation, positive, negative. And that fits great. I mean, this looks amazing. Look at that. It's a perfect fit. Clearly, Technics made this to be an option with whatever it is that they do manufacturing-wise. They must sometimes they couldn't get the same part, and so they designed the board to be able to handle multiples. So just get a little fresh solder on here. There's still plenty of flux. I'm not gonna reflex this. You can see the smoke. It's still burning flux off of there, and in fact I'm gonna have to clean this up. I put so much flux on there, trying to get that old solder off. That stuff's it's pretty nasty. The 40-year-old solder on here is pretty bad. I'm just gonna go ahead and touch up these. What I don't want is I don't want any little solder splinters falling off of these where I opened up these holes, and that's always a possibility. So I want to make sure I just close these pads up with some fresh solder, and that way there's no risk of anything falling off the board, getting caught up in there later, hitting a semiconductor. You never know what can happen here. So I'll go ahead and the other one I got open looks pretty clean, but some of these were a little rough. So there we go. That's it. We've got one down and 25 more to go. It looks great. It feels great. It's not moving. I don't think we need to worry about epoxying it like they had done from the factory, so I'm not going to bother with that. Yeah, so good deal. One down. So one thing to note here as we start kind of going through these capacitors is that there are some variances between the kit and the original caps that are on the board. One of those things is that there are some 1 microfarad caps that there are red WEMA 1 microfarad film caps that come in the kit, and there are 5 capacitors that are electrolytics that are going to get replaced with these red Weemus. So let's start going through these. I have an idea. I think I'm going to take a marker and I'm going to mark all of these caps that get the new film caps. Normally when we do a recap on anything, you know, and I do a lot of arcade games and things as well, you would mark the cap as you replace them. But in this case, the new capacitors are brown, the old ones are blue. So it's really easy to tell which ones have been replaced. So I'm not too worried about that. What I want to do here is just mark all the ones that I need to pay special attention to. These are all the same. They're all a 1 microfarad electrolytic, and they're going to get replaced with a 1 microfarad film cap. So not a big deal, but what I'm trying to do is just identify them all right now. So I'm not, you know, after I get the soldering iron, I'll heat it up, and over there I'm not going back and forth trying to find the, you know, the capacitor that I'm looking for. This way it'll be real obvious which ones I have to deal with. Yeah, some of these are... Boy, just moving them around, I can feel it just feels like the legs on them are ready to snap off. They're so corroded and crusty. So yeah, apparently they've been leaking for quite some time, and been through quite a bit. This unit's never been exposed to, you know, a bunch of moisture. Short of, you know, I did have it down in Florida for several years on an island down there, so it probably got a little bit of moisture to it. But boy, these are, I mean, this is all absolutely, you know, just wear and tear. I mean, they're just age. They're old. So yeah, I think I've got them all marked here. I think I see them all. I've got everything ready to go. If you do this job yourself, you know, I would advise you probably do it this way with the marker. It just makes it a lot easier. You can see even from this distance how much you know, how clear they are as to which ones it is that we're working on, that we need to deal with. Right now, I'm trying to find the right capacitors. This is why I wanted to mark these in advance, because, you know, moving every cap around back and forth one by one as you're, you know, trying to go back and forth with the soldering iron, it's just going to be so much easier to be able to go, you know, there it is, okay, there's the next one, there's the next one, without having to look at, you know, the numbers 202, 203, 205, whatever. So that would be a piece of advice that I would certainly give you if you're going to do this job yourself, which presumably you would. I can't imagine the value of this turntable being high enough that you would want to pay a shop to do this for you. I mean, I don't know what they would charge for this type of work, but honestly, anyone with even the tiniest bit of electronics skill, you know, specifically soldering skills, if you have the ability to do solder, you can totally do this. This is a pretty easy task. There's these caps, here they are. That's what they look like. You can see they're a very different package than the electrolytics, of course. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and get those swapped out. I've got them all marked and labeled now. But like I was saying, you know, you can do this. This is not challenging really in any way. The hardest part is over, and that was just getting the unit apart. I mean, getting the board loose so that we could flip it over and you know, do what we need to do. The magnifier really helps a lot, especially with my you know, my old age eyesight that I have nowadays. Definitely not what it was when I bought this turntable. I could have done this you know, without the magnifier back in 1986 for sure. But nowadays it just helps to see things and get a little bit closer, especially with the soldering, and, you know, make sure that you don't have any you know, solder bridges or cold solder joints. You want to make sure that that you do it right. I want this thing to last another 40 years, which is why I'm doing this. But again, open market value of this unit, even in great condition, they just don't fetch a high dollar amount. The linear tracking tables were not the most popular tables, although I do believe this was the most popular linear tracking table that was ever made. But yeah, most people prefer a traditional tone arm, so these don't have a lot of, like, you know, resale value. I'm just going to get some more flux here on this first one, and I'm going to do this one real quick on camera, and then you know, going from there. And honestly, these, I don't even use the solder wick. I just heat them up, give them a little wiggle. You know, you don't want to pull too hard. It's just, I mean, a little wiggle, and then they just kind of fall right out. You know, there we go. I mean, it's out of there. Pretty easy, and then you can just tap it a little bit with some of the solder wick after you get the pins out. to open the the pad back up so that you can get fresh solder in there. Plus, you don't really want to be soldering over old solder. You want to get that old stuff off. But not really necessary to use the solder wick to remove the capacitor. And again, these are non-polarized, so we can just kind of stick them in there. The hardest part here is really just finding the hole, because now the capacitor is gone. Trying to line up the two holes that you just freed up. And yeah, the way I like to do this, a lot of people don't like to bend pins. I hear people all the time complaining about it, but you can see I just open them up just a little bit. I know it's hard to see on the screen from there, but I mean, really just enough to hold the capacitor in when it's upside down until that solder's on there. And then, yeah, just a quick little shot of fresh solder on top of that pad. And you don't need to overdo it with the flux. It's really not necessary. Just give a quick trim. I like to trim down as close to the board as I can get, but not cutting into the solder joint itself. And then that's it. I mean, done and done. And then, it's just kind of a rinse and repeat situation, folks. You can see all these capacitors. It looks kind of daunting when you look at it, but honestly, I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but this took me about an hour. It really wasn't as bad as it looks. Like I said, you can easily do this on your own and successfully, get this work complete, and then you're going to have essentially a rebuilt mainboard in your, and this isn't just turntables. Obviously, it's any type of older electronics, any kind of vintage audio, arcade games, things of that nature, even game consoles. Some of them have some of these electrolytic capacitors in them, and you really want to get rid of those, because the threat there is that they're just going to go bad. They're already way out of spec, which is just going to make your unit not work very well. But the biggest concern, at least for me, and on this unit in particular, was that one of these was going to fail. And again, you saw all of those Technics branded chips and semiconductors that are on the component side. Almost every semiconductor that I saw in this unit has just dried up supply-wise. There is nothing out there to replace this. So this is a nice little preventative maintenance routine that you can do presumably every 30 to 40 years. Maybe more often if you really feel so inclined. But these newer caps I'm putting into, these are going to last a very long time. And these film caps, these red ones, these will never go bad. These are going to last. They'll far outlast the rest of the life of the turntable. There's no question about that. All right, guys, so we got the caps replaced, all of them. Here are the old ones. Boy, oh boy, yeah, they're pretty bad. So again, really, really glad we did this. So let's go ahead and start addressing reassembly. We got to deal with this heatsink compound over here. It's kind of got all over the place. I wish I'd have cleaned it first. So I'm just going to take a little bit of rubbing alcohol. I've got some 99% ISO and one of my long cleaning Q-tips. I'm just going to get some of this crud off of here. This stuff's old and it's pretty dry, although it's still a little bit gummy, because it's really tacky. Like I said, it kind of drug around the board a little bit as I was working, and made a bit of a mess anyway. It doesn't need to be pristine, but I just want to get some of this thicker gunk. You can see how thick it is. It just doesn't want to let go. But yeah, it's going to be fine. Get this off. Of course, we're going to put all new on there. You got to keep swapping Q-tips here. He's gumming up my Q-tips, so just keep on cleaning away. Scrub as much of this junk off as I can. There's a little like a pin here that sticks up underneath the screw hole there from your perspective. It helps seat the board in place, and it's really hard. It's just tearing my Q-tips apart, so it's kind of hard to clean that up. And of course, I'll want to clean the other side too here on that semiconductor package. And yeah, I'm going to use a paper towel, I think, on this, because that's nice and flat. So I'll just use a piece of paper towel and, again, some rubbing alcohol, and just wipe that junk off of there. It's going to be easier than using the Q-tips on that part. Give it a good scrub. This stuff's really on there, like just stuck. 40 years of heat, of baking it, I guess, inside the turntable has left it a little bit brittle and yet still somehow gummy. It's real nasty stuff. It's almost like getting grease or flux paste even on your fingers. It almost it just really doesn't want to come off. So let's get the board repositioned. All the little modules we took off. This is just going to be probably pretty boring. It's just the reverse of the disassembly, of course. There are a couple of things that that you want to make sure get the power cable kind of back in its little slot behind there, and make sure that all your wires are running the right way. Nothing's sandwiched underneath the board. It's real easy to get something caught up underneath that board, and then you don't want to drive a screw through a wiring harness. That would be kind of pointless after all this work we've put into this unit. We don't want to do that. So anyway, I'm just gonna kind of situate the wires here. Not too big of a deal. Start reconnecting. These are color coded too, which is nice. All the little plugs on here, the connectors. So the one in the back, one's black, one's white. This is a black one right now I'm working on. You can see that one there. They only plug in one way, so you really can't mess this up either. They've made it very, very foolproof. And you can see the connectors down below here too, or what I should say would be the top of the screen. The front of the unit is also one black, one white. So they've really made strides to to make sure that you don't plug these things in wrong and can't possibly do it. They're different style of plug anyway. And then of course there's that plug right on the board that connects to the motor. Right there, this plug that I'm holding on to. So it gave me a little bit of trouble. I don't think I got it on camera, but pulling the board off, you just kind of have to give it a little, like a wobble back and forth, and that will let go. It almost feels like you're going to break the board, but it's not going to break the board. It was a little bit scary, and I think I turned the camera off because I was like, how do I get this loose? It was pretty tight. But yeah, it's literally just rocking the board back and forth after every other connection is off, and it literally just came right out. They have it labeled, on the control section right there. So obviously that is the motor controller connection. That little. I think it's, 18-pin connector right there. That's the one thing, there's little holes on the sides of that connector so that you can line it up really well. We don't want to bend any pins on that, so I'm kind of going to take it real easy here, and I'm just going to give it a little push on top. I can see through the hole that it's lined up, and I'm just going to push it down until it kind of just snaps into place. I hit these wires, see what I'm talking about, these wires get caught up underneath. And here, there it went. Yeah, just step. That's it. That's all there is to it. It's back in and seated just fine. So I'm go ahead and put that. Put the transistor pack back on, and we're gonna get some heat sink on that, or heat sink compound on that heat sink, of course, because we got to get some fresh on there because we've cleaned it off. Don't forget to put new compound on there, because otherwise you're gonna have a real problem. Let's get this RF shield back on. That's definitely not, I don't think that's sitting quite right. Let's see, we'll get that. There we go. Yeah, that's pretty good. That power cord connect, that little, the way it seats in there is a little bit weird. But it won't go back together if it's not in there right. So you'll know. You can't possibly get it completely wrong. We're moving along here pretty good. I think, let's get that heatsink compound on before I forget about it. I really don't want to not get that on there, and just I'm just going to give it a decent amount. Who knows how much really needs to be on that? Probably not much, and never as much as I put on. I like to overdo it a little bit on these type of things, and then just clean off the excess when I'm done. That way I know for sure that it's making really good contact, and this is probably double what really needs to be on there. But I would rather squish some of it out and then clean it off with some rubbing alcohol later, than to not have enough and then run into a problem down the road where you don't have good enough thermal conductivity and you end up burning something up. So this is it's kind of funky trying to figure out how that went in the wires. See, again, I got this wire stuck underneath. This is what I was talking about earlier. Make sure you get those wires out of the way. There we go. That's how she goes. And yeah, it's definitely oozing a lot of thermal compounds. So we'll have to do a little bit of cleanup on this, but that's fine. It's to be expected. And like I said, if you're doing a CPU or something, you don't really have this capability to get up underneath the heatsink and clean it. But in this particular case, this thing's out in the open, pretty easy to get all around it and get it cleaned up. And that's what I'm going to do. So I got it pretty tight. You don't need to crank on it or anything, but making sure that it's got good connectivity. It's seated well, so good thermal transfer. Let's get rid of some of this excess here that's oozed out. I don't want this dripping into the unit, really. It probably wouldn't. It's pretty thick anyway, but when this stuff heats up, it gets a little thinner. And remember, this is upside down right now, so of course this would just drip straight down into the base plate of the turntable. So we don't want that. So yeah, I just got a couple cotton swabs here again with some rubbing alcohol on there, and I'm just gonna give it a little cleanup. Just try to keep it from gumming up the works down the road. So yeah, I'll just finish this up here. This stuff's really thick. Get the little glob I dripped there on the top of the table too. So there we go. That's good. That should last easily another 40 years or so with no problem at all. That thermal paste I put on there is some pretty good quality stuff, and definitely better than what Technics would have used back in the 1980s. So let's get the strobe back in. It just seats right back in there. I did give it a little wipe off camera there just to kind of clean it up, because there's a kind of a plastic wedge right there that strobe shines through, and it had a little bit of dust underneath it just from being in dusty environments, and of course its age. It attracts a lot of dust and dirt. So I just took a microfiber cloth and I just kind of wiped all that inside while I had the opportunity, while I had it apart, clean the LED off. Lights up red, inside. It looks pretty cool when it's lit up. I remember when I got this, I'm like, oh, that's awesome looking. Things we're impressed with in the 80s do not hold true today. So back then, remember, LEDs were still fairly new and modern high technology. Let's get this little clip back in there, this little wire wrap. That we don't want to forget about that. And if this switch, by the way, is bad, your table will not start once the lid is closed. You can hit the start button on it, and it just is going to sit there and stare at you. In fact, I believe the start indicator flashes off and on, fairly quickly to indicate that there's some type of a problem. And it'll do the same if you don't have an album on the platter and you try to start it. Because again, these linear tracking tables, you don't have any manual control of the tone arm. They won't start unless the thing is completely closed up. So it's not like you can get to the vinyl inside and the tone arm and everything as it's running like you could with a traditional table. So they're a little bit different in that regard. But yeah, everything has to work kind of correctly. All the switches have to be right. I did a switch clean out on this earlier on too, as I kind of took it apart. My switches work fine. I haven't had any problems with any of them. They're pretty clean. Really, the table has not been abused. It's just old, and things do wear out over time. Copper corrodes. Even zinc corrodes. I mean, look at the legs on those capacitors we just looked at a little while ago. So anyway, yeah, and when you're screwing these boards back in, like any board, you don't want to crank on these. There's always a risk of cracking the board if you tighten them up too much. You just want to get them snug, and literally that's it. You don't need to go any further than that. You'll feel it, when it starts to resist, it's time to stop. And then, yeah, I'm just do a little bit of cleanup on my fingers here because I got crud on me, and then I want to clean this foil off too. It just looks bad. It really doesn't matter, the little foil shield. I'm gonna get some rubbing alcohol. I'm just gonna give this a wipe. Hey, if you're gonna do it right. Let's make it nice and shiny and pretty again, and not have heat sink compound and flux paste all over it. There we go. Yeah, clean that off too. We're just gonna get some of the dust out of here, and I'm gonna give it a nice air bath too with my duster there that you can see on the bench, just to kind of get any little bits of maybe solder, any dust, of course, that's in there. But really, I'm looking for just little bitty pieces of solder that might be loose, that may have come loose during the process. So I just kind of give it a good blast with the air. Make sure everything comes out of there, because what we don't want to have is some tiny little solder whisker that falls down into the circuitry later on after it's all back together and in use, and just blows something sky high, which would be really, really bad. So anyway, that's kind of it. You know, we're back. You know, just got to put these couple of harnesses back on, plug these connectors in, and you know, we've got this thing almost back together. So let me do that, and I'll join up with you here in just a second. Okay, guys. So we got the bottom plate put back on here, and again paying very close attention to the color of the feet, gold in the rear, silver in the front, and flip her back over and get this thing back together and working, and let's give it a test run. I can't wait to hear it. Yeah, just the reverse, and it's the platter just drops back on. It's a lot easier to put on than it is to take off, and then you don't really have to push on it. The weight of it'll pull itself down onto the bearing. And then, of course, the mats on these are, you know, they're unique. There's a dimple here that has to go into these holes, and the reason for these is so that it can determine the size of the album that you have on it, the record that you're playing, whether it's 45, 33, whatever. And that's because it's got to move the tone arm over there manually, and you don't want that tone arm and that stylus dropping down on that rubber mat. That would be absolutely terrible for your stylus. So I'm going to go ahead and I did pull I pulled the whole cartridge out of this when I started, even though the tone arm's locked. I just felt better with it not being in there. This is a conical stylus, which I haven't even tried yet. This is a new one I picked up. I wanted to give it a go. You know, a lot of people don't like the conical stylus sound. I honestly don't know. I've never had a conical stylus. I think it's a good opportunity, since I had to remove the cartridge anyway. I'm going to go ahead and just screw this one in, and then we'll give it a test run, and we'll see how it is. Maybe I'll do a review on the conical stylus at some point, although I don't do review videos, but it might be a fun one. Just do maybe a side-by-side A/B comparison between the standard stylus, that came, the cartridge that came with the table, new stylus, of course, but that versus the conical. One of the things here too, this is something I kind of want to point out. So my hinges are really tight. I went ahead and tightened them up. If you have one of these turntables, and again, remember, do not turn this thing over like I'm about to with the platter on it, because it will fall off. Let me get this off of here real quick. Hang on. I was in a hurry to show you this. This is something that you don't see a lot. If your hinges, and mine were really loose, the cover would not stay up on its own, so I tightened them up as tight as I could. So there's an adjustment for this, and it's just these two bottom screws right here, and I'm gonna kind of roll them back a little bit because they're way too tight right now. Tightening them all the way is too much, almost, unless your hinges are really worn out in some way. But this gets asked a lot, what do you do if the hinges are worn out? Well, they're probably not worn out. They probably just need to be adjusted. And I like to adjust them just to the point where the weight of the cover is just enough to hold it down flat to the table, but not where it's so loose that you can't even, it should be tight enough that if you lift the cover without pushing it down, it should stay there. But if you do push it down past that certain point, there's like little locks almost in the hinges. You'll feel them. I think there's 3. If you get it past that last lock, it should just kind of gracefully almost soft close itself. And that's kind of perfect, and that's where you want it to be. It really just depends on the age of the hinges, how many times they've been opened and closed. But I don't think anyone's ever had to replace hinges on these units. They are fully adjustable just with these 2 screws, and it's kind of one of those almost a secret, like people don't realize that this is something that you can do. Now, I don't know if this is the same on the other Technics SL series, but certainly for the QL1 you can do this, and kind of puts a whole new life into your hinges as well. That's feeling pretty good. I think we're right where we need to be. I like that. I like that feel. You can see it still locks up pretty easily, but it also drops all the way. So let's get the platter back on here again. Put the mat back on again. Make sure that's lined up and flat. You'll get almost look like a warped record if you don't get those just down in the hole. And sometimes they're like, this one's just giving me a little trouble, but sometimes they give you they give you a little bit of resistance. But yeah, you want to just go along with your finger and make sure that's completely flat. And then once you do that, you are pretty much good to go. The only thing left to do now is unlock that that tone arm. Take that, check that cover again. Take that stylus protector off and play a record. So let's do that. Let's get some power on here first of all. This is going to be the big thing. Hey, look at that. She works. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Let me get a record on here, and we'll come back and we'll check it out and we'll see it spin. Okay, so moment of truth time, huh? Let's grab one of my kind of crappy old 45s here, and yeah, this one's not great. It's okay. Got a bunch of these old 45s. It just pretty good collection of those. I as a radio personality for many years, and so way back in the day, that's what we would play. So try to at least somewhat protect my new stylus here. Let's get it as clean as we can without totally wet cleaning it. Unlock that tone arm, and let's see what we get. Here we go. So far everything looks great. Of course I can't play any of this. YouTube would copyright strike that for sure. But yeah, I can absolutely tell you it is playing. Sounds fantastic. Actually really good. Even through my crappy little bench amp. Not too bad at all. Well, there we go. That's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed this. If you stayed this long, I appreciate it. Hopefully you find the confidence to do this, on your own and on your own equipment. Thanks for watching, as always, and have a great rest of your day.